Hello, and thank you for joining us to discuss ergonomics for the home or virtual office. I'm Alicia Licata from Aon, and I'll be presenting today with two of my colleagues, Jeremy Wilsbacher and Syed Nekvi. Jeremy and Syed are both certified professional ergonomists and part of Aon's ergonomics consulting team. Together, we'll be taking you through the basics of office ergonomics and sharing specific tips for working comfortably in a home or virtual environment. As more and more people transition to remote-based work, there's a growing need to increase awareness around ergonomic best practices, tools to optimize a remote workspace, and solutions to manage the changing dynamics outside of a traditional brick-and-mortar office. Moving to a home or virtual office is a big change for many people, and we want to help make the adjustment process as easy and comfortable as possible. With that goal in mind, the objective of today's webinar is to help you understand neutral working postures and how to achieve them at home. We're going to begin with Syed Nekvi, who will discuss risk factors and neutral working postures. Then Jeremy Wilsbacher will go through specific considerations and best practices for a home or virtual office. Syed, let's get started.
Thank you, Alicia, and hello everyone for listening. So if you are experiencing prolonged discomfort lasting for 2 weeks or more in various joints, or you feel numbness or pain in your upper extremities, neck, and back, you could be suffering from cumulative trauma disorder or CTD. Some of the main risk factors for developing cumulative trauma disorders include posture, force, repetition, duration. Other risk factors include contact stress, which is basically contact pressure, for example, coming from the edge of your desk on your forearm. A combination of these risk factors significantly increases your risk of developing cumulative trauma disorders. We will be focusing a lot on what constitutes a neutral posture. So when we work with the body in a neutral position, we reduce stress and strain on the muscles, tendons, and skeletal system, which helps in reducing our risk of developing cumulative trauma disorders. So here is a list of joints together with neck and back, which will be the focus of our presentation, both in sitting and standing position. Neutral position for a wrist is a straight wrist. In order to achieve that position, the wrist should be in a straight line from the middle finger to its center. Neutral posture for shoulders are achieved when upper arms are relaxed and resting at the side of the body with elbows at sides of the body as well. Neutral posture for elbows can be achieved when elbow joint is bent approximately 90 to 110 degrees. Neutral posture for neck is achieved when the head is in an upright position and is balanced on spine, and the person is looking straight ahead. For example, in an office environment, that neck posture can be achieved by having top of monitor at eye level. Neutral and comfortable back position while seated is achieved when the back is supported and the person is able to maintain S-curve or spine, and the feet are resting comfortably on the floor or a footrest. When it comes to knees and ankles, so in a seated position, the neutral posture of knees can be achieved with knee angle at approximately 90 to 110 degrees, with feet planted firmly on the floor or footrest underneath the knees. So you will be provided with an Aon guidelines handout, as you can see on the right-hand side here, which will cover office ergonomics basics and will focus on step-by-step process for setting up your home workstation. So now my colleague Jeremy is going to walk you through various steps for setting up your home office workstation. Jeremy?
Okay, thank you, Syed, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. So now we transition into the working at home environment. For many of you, working at home might be new, it might be temporary, But while you're there, we got to consider the fact that you might be there for a certain amount of time. And if you're going to be working consistently from your home or virtual environment, we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to get set up as best as possible to achieve some of the neutral postures that Syed described for us. Now, what you're looking at here are probably some examples of what you might look like when you first got home with your laptop. Most of us, if we don't consistently work from home, we bring our laptop home and we set up on a counter, on the dining room table, we might sit down on the couch or even a bed. And although these postures might be fine for short-term use, if we're going to be working for a prolonged period of time, we really want to try to figure out what kind of a creative setup can we come up with to help us work with more improved postures in our new environment. Many of you may set up on a household desk, a dining room table. This might be a more common scenario, and this is what it's probably going to look like for a lot of people. One of the challenges that we have in working in our home environment is a mismatch between the height of our chair and the height of the work surfaces that we have available to us. So you'll see in both of these examples, because of the height of the desk or the table, we're not able to keep the elbows close to the side of the body, as was described already. And so we set our laptop on the table, we push it forward so that we can lean with our arms on the table. So now with our arms extended, we've got a risk of strain to the shoulder and the neck. This often results in us leaning forward just by the nature of the laptop being forward on the desk. And so then we present a risk factor for the back. We've got the contact stress. So this is the scenario that we want to try to avoid. And so we're going to walk through some examples of what you can do at home to try to get yourself one step closer to those neutral postures. So we're going to start out just talking about using a laptop in general and the ergonomics implications of using a laptop. Obviously, with a laptop, the primary challenge is that your keyboard and your monitor are attached to each other. And so we're going to start out by talking through some different levels of preference in regards to your options. Preference number one, of course, is having an external mouse, an external keyboard, and an external monitor. So if you have all three of those pieces of equipment that can plug into your laptop and be set up in whatever way you would like, you're going to be pretty close to what you probably can achieve in an office environment. And so be thinking about what kind of external equipment you can make available for yourself so that you can be as close as possible to the ideal setup. Now, we recognize that many of us are not going to have access to those accessories and may have to come up with some alternative solutions. So a second best option would be, perhaps, for example, you don't have a monitor, but maybe you do have an external keyboard and a mouse. In that case, you can plug in the keyboard and mouse and use the monitor of your laptop as your computer monitor, and you'll cease to use the keyboard and mouse of that laptop. With that setup, you can also get fairly close to ideal postures. Now, others of you may not have any external accessories. And so in that case, of course, we're going to have to deal with a compromise. Our recommendation in that case would be to set up the laptop as best as possible to accommodate the neutral postures of your upper body. So if you look at this image, you have the elbows close to the side of the body, you have the straight wrists, you're sitting back into the chair, and you're trying to get the majority of your body into the recommended postures. Now, of course, the body part that's going to suffer in this case, potentially, is the neck. You're going to be looking downward at that laptop screen. So we want to be aware of that. Tilt your monitor on your laptop so that you can minimize the amount of neck bending. And then just be really proactive about frequently stretching your neck, doing neck rolls, getting up and moving, changing your postures, and try to give your neck muscles some relief from being in that posture for a prolonged period of time. And of course, there may be some of you who don't even have a work surface to work on, or you might end up in a virtual environment where you're working on your lap, or you're working on a couch, or some other scenario where you don't even have a work surface. And in that case, similar recommendations apply as preference 3, but basically try to find some kind of a cushion to get that laptop on your lap. Try to get your upper body into the most ideal postures possible, and then just put a little bit of extra attention into taking care of your neck, because you're going to have that downward bent neck posture for a prolonged period of time. So those are some general concepts on working with a laptop in your environment. Now we're going to get into some specifics of what you can do at home. Now we have to throw it out there. Of course, you could have an ideal setup at home. And so if you have the space and the money, you're able to buy, you know, a height adjustable desk where you can be working sitting and standing in perfect postures. You could have a roller mouse. You could have all kinds of really perfect equipment. You could have dual monitors on adjustable monitor arms. And yes, you can even do exercise while you're working at your desk. So we're going to throw that out there because, of course, you can go that route. At the same time, we recognize that for the majority of you, you're not going to have all of those options. So let's start looking at the more common scenarios you're probably finding yourself in. So what'll probably happen is you're going to set up on a desk, and the height of that desk is going to be a mismatch with the chair you're sitting in. And so typically, most of us want to keep our feet on the ground. And so we sit in the chair, we have our feet on the ground, and then our upper body is what suffers as a result. And so one simple solution, if we just ask ourselves, how can we get one step closer to the ideal postures? One step closer would be, how do we get up higher in that chair so that our elbows can be resting at the side of our body while working on the keyboard? So we can add cushions to the chair, pillows, but then what happens, of course, is that we're raising our feet up higher as well. So you can see in the photo on the right, we can find a footrest. Might be reams of paper or a box, but try to find something that you can use as a footrest so that you can work in that more ideal body posture. And then the question is, how can we get creative and get another step closer to the neutral postures? So if you can get access to an external keyboard and a mouse, for example, you can do what you see in this image here, where we raise the laptop up higher, the laptop serves as your monitor, and then you have a keyboard and mouse that you can use at the elbow height with the elbows close to your body. Again, the common scenario that occurs when we have that mismatch between the height of the chair and the height of the desk is that we're going to rest our forearms on the edge of the desk. We're going to lean forward. This is one of the more common problems we see resulting from that mismatch in heights, in work heights. So leaning forward, you know, eventually we're going to end up with back pain, and we're probably going to blame it on our chair. And it probably has nothing to do with the chair. It probably is more associated with the setup of our equipment. So let's look at other options. How can we get one step closer? So again, here you can see if you have an external keyboard, even putting that keyboard on your lap allows you to get into pretty good ergonomic positions with your body. Now you'll note in that image that the mouse is still on the table. And so we haven't solved all of our problems. You're still going to have to be reaching with an extended arm to operate the mouse. But it is one step closer, and every step closer to the neutral postures is going to be an improvement. Again, we're going to look at that scenario and say, what else can we do to further improve our postures? And so in this case, small side tables were used, one for the keyboard and then one for the mouse on the side. And the heights weren't exactly perfect. So again, boxes or reams of paper, boards, different items can be used to get the equipment get the furniture at the right height for you. And so in this scenario, it might look a little cumbersome, but if you're going to be working full time on your laptop at home, getting a setup like this or with whatever other options you have available to you is going to go a long way towards reducing fatigue and aches and pains as you continue to work at your home or virtual workstation. Some of you may have access to an external monitor. And so if you do, that can be a great tool as well, where you can plug your laptop into the external monitor. If you have an external keyboard, that can allow you to get set up really well. One of the things you want to consider with a monitor, whether it be an external monitor or your laptop, is that often we tend to push that monitor against the back of the desk. And so as a result of that, we might end up leaning forward as we're working on the computer as well. So really pay attention to how you're sitting back into the back of your chair. And if you need to, move that monitor closer to you. You know, see what you can come up with to get the monitor at the right height. As Syed mentioned, you typically want the top of the screen to be at about eye height so that your natural gaze will hit the middle of the screen. And then move that monitor closer if you find that you're leaning forward towards it. Another option to consider is to look around your home and really think creatively about what your work surface could be. Most of us are naturally going to be drawn towards a table or a desk in our house, but there might be something else that could offer a better height work surface. So ask yourself, do you have any card tables? Do you have an ironing board or a kid's art table? Some other type of work surface that might be a little bit lower and closer to your elbow height that could allow you to get into better postures. We can always get the monitor up higher, as you can see in this example with the box and the reams of paper. So just think about what kind of work surface can get your keyboard and mouse at the ideal working position. Another option you might want to think about is trying to create a standing option. Some of you may have a bar or a kitchen counter that's a little bit higher and could potentially be a good standing option. Now, of course, if you initially start to work on that counter, you might look like the postures you see in these photos, where you're bent over, you're sitting, you're leaning, and of course, we don't want you to be working in that position for a long period of time. So if you have that counter, really think about, again, what do I have around that can help me get into the ideal postures? So if you have that external keyboard and a mouse, in this case, a large box was able to elevate the height of the keyboard and mouse and getting the monitor up again. You can see there's a mat on the floor. You may or may not have a mat. Perhaps you have shoes that have good insoles to help reduce fatigue. But really look at all those opportunities and ask yourself what might be possible with what you have available. Now, in regards to chairs, many of us are not going to have a really nice office chair at home. Some of you might, and of course, if you do have one, please use that one as you're working on your computer. But if you don't have an actual office chair, then look at the best chair you can find in your house, and you might have to make some modifications. So the image on the left shows using a pillow for lumbar support. You could use a rolled up towel. As long as you can get something in that area of your lower back that provides that lumbar support, that can help maintain that S curve of your spine. You might need to use cushions or pillows to help elevate the height as you work in your chair. And the footrest is something to really consider as well. As I mentioned, one of the primary problems of ergonomic problems while working at home is that mismatch between the height of the chair and the table. So in most cases, you're not going to have an adjustable table, and you're going to need to elevate yourself to work on that work surface. And so having a footrest or something that can serve as a footrest is going to be our goal. And we want to just avoid having our feet hanging or swinging our feet back and having them rest on the base of the chair. So to close up with a few summary tips, as you can see from what I've shared so far, having a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse that can be separate really is the goal, if possible. So really consider what your options might be to be able to separate that equipment. Check to see whether you can bring your monitor or your keyboard and mouse from your office to your home environment. Some people might be able to use a TV as their monitor. So consider whether you have an extra TV around, or maybe you just use one of your primary TVs. But if you can plug into your TV, you could even use your laptop as your keyboard and mouse, which of course isn't ideal, but it's one option that at least separates that keyboard and mouse. Look around to see if you've got an old monitor, or perhaps one of your friends have an old computer monitor, or an external keyboard or a mouse. An external keyboard or a mouse are not very expensive if you wanted to order one, so you could look online and try to find those options as well. But increasing the accessories you have really are going to go a long way towards improving the postures that you can achieve at home. And then some other tips. One of the things that we might have a tendency to do because it's our home environment is to jump on a bed or on a couch, sit on our legs. It's a more casual environment. We're used to sitting more casually, and so we might have that tendency to do some of those things while we're working on our computer. So really take care to avoid sitting on your legs, sitting cross-legged, sitting cross-legged on your bed and leaning forward, etc. Really take the steps to get as close as you can to what we're describing here. Another thing to really keep in mind, and of course this applies in any environment, but you really want to be aware of trying to incorporate as much movement as you can into your day. So one of the things I do is every time I'm on a phone, if I'm on a phone call and I don't need to be attached to my computer, I'm walking around, I'm pacing. So I'm creating movement in my day. If you can have a sitting and a standing workstation, that can be a great opportunity to mix up your postures and spend part of your day sitting, part of your day standing. And in each of those cases, try to get those workstations set up as best you can. Make sure that you're fitting in breaks. You know, you're at home, so life is more flexible. Step outside every once in a while, take a walk periodically. Just try to incorporate as much movement as you can, because being stuck in those static postures is not good for any of us for a long period of time. And then one other thing you can consider, if you have a really computer intensive job where you really are glued to that screen all day long, one strategy that can be really effective to mix up your day is to incorporate what we call micro stretch breaks, which are basically really frequent yet really short breaks where you can stop and do some stretches to increase blood flow, get that circulation going again, and help those body parts recover from the static postures that they've been exposed to. So it could be as simple as, you know, taking 1 minute every 30 minutes to do some stretches. And there are plenty of apps available that can even ping you and give you reminders to get up and move your body. So that's another option to consider. So as Syed mentioned, we have a handout that will be accompanying this presentation that you can feel free to share with your colleagues, and you can review yourself to try to see which strategies you might be able to incorporate into your home or virtual workstation setup. So be looking for that, and feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues as you see fit.
Thank you so much, Jeremy and Syed. And thank you to our listeners. We really appreciate your time and attention today, and we hope that the information we've shared is helpful. If you have any questions or you'd like more information, please go ahead and contact your company to see what support and resources are available to you. This concludes our webinar presentation.